My name is Carolyn Miller, and I am a 20-year-old student studying media at Scripps College in Claremont, California. In the summer of 2013, I traveled to South Africa to intern for a month with Africa Media and study wildlife film. At the age of 11, I traveled with my family to visit South Africa and Botswana for 3 weeks, and it impacted me significantly. 9 years later, I was ready to begin a new adventure that would satisfy my thirst for travel and further my academic and personal passion for film. The internship included a 10-day trip to the Schotia Game Reserve where I planned to film vervet monkeys. My plan was to develop a short creative film which would link my fond memories of the African wild with my present passion for film as a mode of storytelling. Things did not quite go as planned, and after 3 days with only one sighting of the monkeys, Ryan, the specialist I was working with, proposed a plan to get more footage. The plan included the installation of 3 fruit baiting stations with camera traps to record footage when the monkeys came to eat. At first it seemed okay to me, but after a few days I began to harbor tendrils of doubt about the ethics of this arrangement. It was not what I had in mind when I came to South Africa to study film, but at the same time it wasn't as if I had any prior knowledge. And so for me, the line between ethical and unethical felt significantly blurred. I decided to inquire with professionals from different sides of the field to find out what ethics meant to them in wildlife film. I wanted to know not just how they felt about the monkeys, but also their feelings about the larger spectrum of the field. So, Justin, how much would you say truth actually matters in wildlife filmmaking? In short, would you say that ideals or purism exists in the field?
I haven't done much research about it, but just from what I know, I don't believe there is much. Very often they'll target one animal and give it a title or name, but they'll use about 5 different other individuals for the same name. To the average viewer, they don't pick it up, so it's all right, I guess.
Where does conservation come into play in terms of wildlife filmmaking, and how significant of a role does it play?
With wildlife filmmaking and filming, conservation will come in where the crew will come over and pay that establishment to film those animals wherever they might be in Africa or the world. And that money that they've used to pay to film will get put back into conservation, hopefully by that establishment. So yeah, it can be on the same level as people coming to do a game drive and people coming hunting. It can be on that same level, yeah, absolutely.
As interns coming to Scotia to film wildlife, why are we allowed to behave differently than the normal guests at the reserve?
You're under our guidance all the time, and we just keeping an eye on things to make sure everything's still safe at the same time. So yeah, we're able to do that. If we did it with the normal guests, then every other guest would want to do it, and then there's just way too many people just wanting to do their own thing. So there's got to be lines drawn with that regard.
Where do you draw the line in terms of what you believe to be ethical behavior in the quest to get the necessary footage?
When it's possible that there's going to be irreversible damage, either physically or mentally, to the individual animal, then I don't believe it should be done. If you are going to bait, an animal should just stumble across it, and then if it's not there again, then he's not going to be bothered by it. He can go and forage for himself.
Okay, thank you. How much does truth actually matter in wildlife filmmaking? In short, would you say that ideals or purism exists?
In terms of the truth, what's truthful for wildlife filmmaking, I believe, is telling a story. That is a true story and a true representation of what we're trying to show in nature. You know, for instance, the story is genuine in that jackals hunt guinea fowls, but it might only happen, or you might only see it once every 6 months. So if it's a situation where I don't know if I want to say that on camera, but you want to put it in the jackal's advantage in the hunt to be able to get that type of footage, and you're telling a genuine story, you should be allowed a little leeway with getting that kind of stuff.
Where would you say that conservation comes into play in terms of wildlife filmmaking, and how significant of a role do you think it plays?
Conservation is always a difficult question because a lot of people in wildlife filmmaking, like myself, is driven by conservation because we love nature. But the reality is, if we want to get programs onto the big screen, into the mass media, then the mass media doesn't like showing conservation films because the audiences in general don't like being lectured to. So it's a very delicate game you play in which you try to sneak in conservation messages into your stories, but if you become too lecherous, then they switch off and you won't get a commission.
What is your personal opinion on some of this week's behavior, like the baiting or training of wild animals, as well as actions performed specifically with the intent of provoking the wildlife?
You know, using food to bait wild animals and to get them to perform is always going to be controversial. My take on it is that if it doesn't endanger the animal, and it doesn't endanger the animal once you leave, then it's fine. And it's done throughout wildlife filmmaking, and it's done throughout wildlife tourism.
After speaking with Justin and Ryan, I wanted to seek out the opinion of one of the guides, since they are removed from both the business and research sides of the field of wildlife filmmaking. I thought that I would speak with Leandy, who had been one of our guides for the week. I asked her to provide her personal opinion on the ethics of baiting and provoking not just the vervets, but wildlife in general.
They will come closer to vehicles, scratching people's bags. Baboons will attack people to get food. If you're looking at bigger animals like elephants, they do realize how big they are, so if they don't get food off a vehicle like they did the previous time, there's a possibility of them knocking over vehicles. So it does become dangerous and they can kill people. So to me, it's not worth a 5-minute untruthful documentary, because once you leave, nature is supposed to go back to where it was in the first place, but that never really happens once animals associate humans with food or socialism. So I believe that if you want to provoke animals, if you want to get them to perform, you might as well go to a zoo where they already associate people with food and being socialized and being stimulated.
My time in Scotia surprised me as well as enriched me. I learned not just about the technical aspects of wildlife filmmaking, but about the broader implications of those films and what it takes to truly make one. I learned to cultivate and stick with my beliefs, but more importantly, to let them lead me to seek a greater understanding of a topic which I learned that I felt passionately about. To conclude, I've presented some of the limited footage I did get of the vervet monkeys. I do not seek to moralize, nor do I in any way seek to burden others with my opinions. Instead, I encourage viewers to decide for themselves where the line is that distinguishes ethical from unethical behavior, and further to develop their own beliefs, whether or not they echo my own.